உள்ளதலதுள்ள உணர் உள்ளதோ உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளலற உள்ளத்தே உள்ளதா உள்ளம் எனும் உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளல் எவன் உள்ளத்தே உள்ளபடி உள்ளதே உள்ளல் உணர்வாயே. Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we have been meditating on the verses of Ulladu Narpadu. We have taken up the first portion, which is called as Viveka, by Pandit Lakshman Sharma sir, and in that we are in verse number 10. Just to bring it to context, verse number 8 onwards is about the I that is primary, that is the Ishvara in one sense and the reality of Ishvara, but Bhagavan is going to delineate the Nama and the concepts that he is giving, as he says in verse number 8, Eppeyaritte evuruvil ethinum, the nameless and formless Supreme Being can be worshipped, can be meditated upon by giving any name. And we found in verse number 9 that he is giving the names Irattaigal, Muppodigal, Endrum Ondru Patri. So we were meditating on the concepts Irattaigal, Muppodigal. Though a particular name of a deity was not given, Bhagavan had indeed named the universe or the world as Irattaigal or Muppodigal. So let us read today's verse, verse number 10, 11 and 12 and 13. The four verses are going to be on the dyad, on the Irattai of Jnanam and Ajnanam. In the 9th verse, Bhagavan had said, Irattaigal என்றும் ஒன்று பற்றி இருப்பவாம் அவ்வொன்றேதென்று கருத்தினுள் கண்டால் கழலும் அவை. If you inquire into that I, on which or depending on which the dualities arise, then that I itself will vanish, and along with that the dualities will vanish into the real self. That was the import of verse number 9. And the next four verses, being an Upanishad on Jnana Marga, Ulladu Narpadu is going to bring us to the duality of Jnanam and Ajnanam, knowledge and ignorance. Bhagavan has referred to this duality many times in the talks, that the true knowledge is beyond the duality of knowledge and ignorance. But more of that later. Let us see an overview of these four verses and then go into verse number 10. Now for the chanting of verse number 10. Ariyamai விட்டு அறிவின்றாம், அறிவு விட்டு அறியாமை இன்றாம். அறியாமை விட்டறிவின்றாம், அவ் அறிவு விட்டறியாமை என்றாகும். அந்த அறிவும் அறியாமையும் ஆர்க்கென்றம்முதலாம் தன்னை அறியும் அறிவே அறிவாம். அறியாமை விட்டறிவின்றாம், அறிவு விட்டு அறியாமை என்றாகும். அந்த அறிவும் அறியாமையும் ஆர்க்கு என்றம்முதலாம் தன்னை ariyum arive arivam. The next verse is Arivurum tannai ariyad ayalai arivad ariyamayandri arivo Arivayakadara tannai ariya arivariyamai arume arave arivariyamayum அற்றதறிவாமே அறியுமது உண்மை அறிவாகாது அறிதற்கும் அறிவித்தற்கும் அந்நியம் என்றாய் அவிர்வதால் தான் அறிவாகும் பாழன்றறிவாய் செறிவாய ஞானமாம் தானேமை நானாவாம் ஞானம் அஜானமாம் பொய்யாம் அஜானமுமே ஞானமாம் தன்னை அன்று இன்று அணிகள் தாம் பலவும் பொய் மெய்யாம் பொன்னை அன்றி உண்டோ புகழ். These four verses are on the duality of knowledge and ignorance. All the other dualities are supposed to be similar or dependent on this, dependent on knowledge and ignorance. If one inquires into knowledge and ignorance and takes oneself to the root, then one gets to the root of all dualities. But a brief look at what these four verses are about. The first verse in the duality, Ariyamai with Arivindram, is about how the seen world can be seen as the duality of knowledge and ignorance, and how knowledge is the obverse of ignorance and ignorance is the obverse of knowledge. It is about that. The second verse, verse number 11, now takes us to Arivurum Tannai Ariyadu. It puts the attention directly on the I and says all the ayal, the earlier duality of knowledge and ignorance, is all ignorance only. So in verse number 10, the seen is allowed to be investigated into as a duality of knowledge and ignorance. In verse number 11, that whole area of seen is now declared to be ignorance. Arivurum tannai ariyadu, ayalai arivadu, ariyamai andri arivo. Then verse number 12 and 13, just for a brief look at the information content, is about the self, is about jnanam. Jnanamam tanemai, nanavam jnanam ajnanamam, and arivaryamayum atradariva. The arivu, final arivu is completely rid or free or beyond or transcending the arivu and ariyamai duality. So that is the layout of the four verses on this duality of arivu and ariyamai. First verse is on the seen as a division of the knowledge and ignorance. Then Bhagavan puts attention on only knowing oneself is knowledge, knowing anything else is ignorance only. Then he talks about the pure knowledge that is beyond knowledge and ignorance, and how multiplicity is always ignorance, and the jnanam is like the gold, and to see ornaments is ignorance, and to see the gold is knowledge. That is how this set of verses is going to end. But we'll take it one by one. Today's verses, Ariyamai vittu Arivindram, how Arivu vittu Ariyamai indrahum, அந்த அறிவும் அறியாமையும் ஆர்க்கு என்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறியும் அறிவே அறிவாம். This is the verse. Before we get into Bhagavan's Upadesham, we can have a brief look at what was the witnessing meditations we had discussed in Anubandham, the Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, and how that is taken to a different plane in Arivum Ariyamayum. In witness meditation, which is there in the Buddhist meditation and the Vipassana meditations, and in many other streams, we discussed that the duality taken up is the judgmental duality of good and bad, right and wrong. That the witness is beyond the division or the duality of good and bad, right and wrong. Of course, then we will have to come from there that any division implies there is this good and bad. Though it may not be called good and bad, it still implies good and bad. So that has to be taken to the root like that. That is when the witnessing starts. One comes to the witnessing of everything. But Bhagavan takes up the duality of knowledge and ignorance. It is not taking the duality of cause and effect or the duality of right and wrong or good and bad, but it is the duality of knowledge and ignorance. So with that, let us get into this verse. Ariyamai vittu arivindram, arivu vittu ariyamai indram. That in the scene, the knowledge that arises cannot arise free of the rise of ignorance, and the ignorance cannot arise or appear apart from or free of the knowledge of something else. We will go into that meaning later. Ariyamai vittu arivindram, arivu vittu ariyamai indram, indrahum, anga arivum ariyamayum arku. For whom is this duality of knowledge and ignorance? Mudalam tannai ariyum arive arivam. To know the source of both ariyamai and arivu, that source, to know that source is true knowledge, says Bhagavan. The verse itself is simple, but it opens up the whole field of duality and going beyond for us. The connection that this verse is about Ishvara comes to us from the fact that the whole universe is divided into knowledge and ignorance. And who is that I who is beyond this whole plane of knowledge and ignorance? Obviously, that I is the source of the whole creation, but one has to go beyond that I too is the implication of this verse and all the other verses in the work. Ariyamai vittu arivindram, arivu vittu ariyamai indrahum, anda arivum ariyamayum arku என்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறியும் அறிவே அறிவாம். So the verse put together is knowledge cannot arise independent of the rising of ignorance, and ignorance cannot arise without the simultaneous rising of knowledge. However, to inquire into for whom is this duality of knowledge and ignorance, for whom is this duality of knowledge and ignorance, and to find out the truth of that I is real knowledge, is true knowledge, is the import of the verse. Now, what is it to meditate on such kind of verses? We had a discussion yesterday that why do we meditate on this kind of verses or the truths given by Bhagavan in the form of statements. For instance, he has given the statement that everything happens according to the one Ishvara present within each one of us, conducting everything according to each one's prarabdha. So, to put it briefly or into a very practical sentence, that everything that happens through the presence of Ishvara within them. So yesterday with a devotee and we were having a discussion as to how this translates into practice, how this meditation on truth translates into practice. The discussion was that though this meditation is held, this meditation is that everything, whatever is happening is happening because within each individual there is the Ishvara, and the Ishvara releases the thoughts, and according to the thoughts only they are able to act. Therefore, whatever is to happen, because all deeds are results of thoughts, whatever is to happen as deeds will happen, try what you may to stop it. That which is not to happen will not happen, try however much you may to make it happen. This is certain, says Bhagavan. So when you hold it, the mind is still for a moment. But the question from the discussion was, the mutual question in the discussion was, when I get involved in the world, when I get involved in my relationships, then I forget this. I forget this rule and I involve myself as though the relationships and the individualities have capacity to do something independent of the Ishvara Shakti. So I involve myself in that, and at the end of the dialogue, I get this feeling, oh, hereafter I should not do this. This particular thing I said, that is what created the disturbance in me. That is where I forgot Bhagavan's rule. Hereafter, I should not think of that. Hereafter, I should not do this. Hereafter, I should not tell them this. So this is what was wrong. And instead of merely regretting, there is a decision as, hereafter, let me not do this in this particular situation. So the discussion was, is it all right that we leave the learning at that? And the finding to us was, we can do one step better. That we know that the sadhana is always in the present moment. The sadhana is not for postponement. The sadhana in Bhagavan is in the present moment. So when the thought comes, this was not done right by me, hereafter I will do it properly. Though in the discussion, the person had said, I am able to convince myself that it is Bhagavan within those persons who is making them act. So really serious allegations about them is not there. The allegation is only about me doing better. Then we came to this point, am I also not being covered by that rule? By the rule that Ishvara within me is operating. So I have not gone the final state by blaming another or by saying they could have done better, because I have applied the rule to the others that they are all being made to act by Bhagavan, but I have failed to apply it on myself. So when I apply it on myself, that meditation, then the postponement or the regret is avoided. That whatever had been said by me also, of course, the earlier step is that the meditation is applied to all others, and then the meditation is applied to me also. Therefore, whatever I did is not regret worthy, or whatever I did need not be corrected in time, but can be offered to the meditation itself. So that was the finding, that the meditations given by Bhagavan are of such nature that first they can be applied to all others involved and give them relief, that whatever is happening according to that meditational rule only. Finally, it is applied to me also, that if it is the God or the power that is running from within them, then it is the same God that has allowed me to act. So my carry away from any transaction or any relationship in the area of duality need not be of regret or of postponement, but can be an offer to the meditation rule. Now, that is how these meditation rules are working normally. But how are these meditations on Ulladu Narpadu different? The meditation rules generally, like the meditation on the Ishvara, which I had discussed, which is actually applicable to the Epayaritu also. in whatever name you meditate on, if you meditate it on with the reason that that name is the one who is all powerful, then whatever meditation we had discussed on Bhagavan's statement would be applicable to that meditation on the Nama. But see the beauty of the meditating on Ulladu Narpadu. It is going to save us from spending time on meditating on clearing all others and bringing them all under the power of God and then freeing us. It is going to free us of that by putting attention on the one directly. The others are in the area of mind, and if you apply a meditation rule of the omnipotent God or the omniscient God, then since the meditation involves the other, it is usually the practice that meditation rule has to first cover the universe. It has to cover everyone. And then since you have covered everyone, you don't have any residual thoughts about any of them. You don't blame this person or that person or the government or the organization or even the fate, but you have freed all of that as being run by the one force. Then you are able to free yourself by saying that if all of that is run by that one force, then whatever transactions happen from me in the duality is also impelled by that one force, and I can offer that entire transaction to that one force. That is how meditation takes place normally. But the meditations that we are doing in this Ulladu Narpadu are going to free us from the need to cover the world with leather. Bhagavan says, when you find that the world is made of lot of stones and thorns here and there, then you don't need to cover the whole world with leather. All you need to do is wear leather chappals. That is enough, says Bhagavan. So the Atmavichara Marga is like that. That Bhagavan, by his meditations in Ulladu Narpadu, is going to cover that area of mind and ask us to focus on the I, so that the tapas energy is all gathered and entirely focused on this root of all the whole universe. That's what we will slowly discover. And those kind of meditations really kick off from this verse, that how Bhagavan removes the necessity to inquire into the nature of the multiple parts of the world, and how it is enough if you go to the root. And what is the root and how to put attention on that? This is what is going to be the meditation that Bhagavan is going to suggest. And let us see how he does this in this verse. Ariyamai vittu arivindram, arivu vittu ariyamai endram. There is this is not a new fact to human beings, that even the scientists and philosophers in the last 2000 years, they have come upon this fact that there is no real knowledge in this world, because any new discovery opens up 10 new questions. In one sense, every new knowledge that comes into the human scope increases ignorance. Every new fundamental particle found now increases a dimension which is totally unknown earlier and opens up much more questions than that were before. I have referred to a video on ignorance, how the study of science and the study of knowledge itself is no more considered to be a study of knowing facts or knowledge of facts, but is considered to be a study of conscious ignorance, they say. And the only purpose of knowledge and the higher investigations is only to develop new and more nuanced and intelligent questions rather than find any real answers. So to that extent, we can give credit to the philosophers and scientists also, but Bhagavan is going to take us to a different dimension altogether without the necessity to get ourselves bound in that area. How Bhagavan says, அறியாமை இன்றி அறிவின்றாம், அறியாமை விட்டு அறிவின்றாம், அறிவு விட்டு அறியாமை என்றாம். Let us clarify this sentence a little bit. Like, one of the ways we can know it is, since the arivu that we know is either through the senses or through the mind, it is always directed arivu. The arivu or knowledge always is called as suttarivu. I pay attention to a particular object and know about it more or less, that really doesn't matter, but this is paying attention to this. Obviously, by paying attention to this, I am ignoring the other things. By paying attention to Ulladu Narpadu, I automatically don't attend to the other scriptures, the other subjects, and many other things. But fortunately for us, as Sadhuvam Swamigal says, this is meditation on the Supreme. So it incidentally covers all others. That by knowing which everything is known. There was a quote sent by Venkatesh ji today, which says, why is the knowledge of God said to be supreme? Because the knowing of that is knowing of everything. The possessing of that is the possession of everything. Therefore, that is the complete or total knowledge. In a simple way, Shivanand Maharaj's quote says, what happens when we have knowledge of not this directed knowledge, but of that which is beyond this knowledge and this ignorance. This knowledge automatically means ignorance. The paying attention to this book means ignorance of the rest or not attending to them. Another way of looking at it is that the popular discussion we have with doctors today, those who are not doctors, but those who have read a little bit English and have some knowledge of the internet. There was this visit to the to have a checkup for my mother-in-law who had a stroke some time back, some 2 years back, and she had recovered from that amazingly well at that time. And we have been consulting that doctor. So we had gone with another friend who was very knowledgeable through the net, not a doctor at all. So as the doctor was prescribing the treatment, our friend was reeling out the new medicines that have come and the effects and the not effects, all those things. Then the doctor pointed out that nowadays there is a lot of tension because you know lots about medicine without knowing the fundamentals about the medical field. So some knowledge about what happens when this is taken and what are the side effects, that gives us some knowledge, but it is having the basis of the lot of ignorance about that field itself, which brings tension as to how to overcome the defects. It is said that to become a doctor, it will take only 6 months, but to become a real good surgeon, it will take 30 years of experience, because to know what to do when something goes wrong, for that you need the years of experience. Now, obviously, we cannot equal that knowledge the doctor has built and the experience they have gained. So it is clear that the value of the doctor's knowledge comes alongside the ignorance that we have, that the non-doctors, so the knowledge has a value, the knowledge of the medicines and the knowledge of surgery, the knowledge of neuroscience has a value only when there is a simultaneous ignorance. So this is another way to know this. Even that doctor, when he is going on the road and his car packs up, the knowledge of the mechanic has value to him because he is ignorant of the functioning of the engine. the functioning of the machine. So that is one way. The first way that we can refer to knowledge and ignorance is that to know this, I have to deliberately put aside the other things. Another way is to know that the value of knowledge arises only in the presence of ignorance. And another way to know this, the knowledge and ignorance, is based on time. When you take time as the scale, only the knowledge indicates, when we get knowledge of something, we understand that before this we didn't know that. Like all the devotees of Bhagavan, we will realize that as a devotee, could we have come to the path of spirituality by the way we were plodding on by ourselves? If we ask to any devotee, we will clearly say no. That the knowledge that Bhagavan's grace has brought was not there before. When I look back, it was not there before. So the knowledge and the practices that Bhagavan's grace has brought in was not present before, is arising in the presence of that ignorance. So in the time scale, when a new knowledge comes, then we are aware of the previous ignorance. Of course, these are relative and we should keep it in that perspective. Even the Bhakti Marga reference I have made, it will be removed. That duality also will be removed. That the duality that whether it is your own sadhana or whether it is Bhagavan's grace that brought in the jnana will be removed in the actual jnana. A bit more of that as we go on. But these are the three ways in which we can look at the duality of knowledge and ignorance. That ariyamai vittu arivindram, arivu vittu ariyamayundram. That without ignorance there is no arising of knowledge. Without knowledge there is no arising of ignorance. Of course, we can take it to the ultimate knowledge and ignorance, and the reference to the talk I had forwarded about the rising of universal consciousness, that jatasya hi dhruvor mrutyur dhruvor janmam mritasya cha, that itself we can take as birth is knowledge, death is ignorance, or death, so far as we are concerned, is placed in the area of ignorance. We don't know about it, or the ego is not allowed knowledge of that, and the birth is the beginning of knowledge. If we take without birth there is no death, and without death there is no birth. The fact that there is no birth without death can be very clear to us. Jatasya hi dhruvor mrityur. Whatever is born cannot be free of death. Is clear to us. There was this question by another devotee, is there marujanma? That dhruvor janma mrityasya cha. Is there the rising of another birth? She is an aged devotee and she was asking that will I be reborn? So there the answer of Bhagavan is that if we are playing in the duality of knowledge and ignorance, if we are still interested in the area of the duality of birth and death, then dhruvor janmam mritasya cha. He asks what happens in deep sleep. After deep sleep, is your intellect and mind and identity not born again? Are you not given knowledge again? So that ignorance called death cannot stand apart from the knowledge, the relative knowledge called as birth. Both are part of the duality. As in that talk which I had forwarded, the birth or the organizing of certain things is called as the tying up of energy within a few fundamental particles or fundamental elements, and the death is called as release of that energy from the association with the fundamental particles which go back to their elemental state. But this energy that ties itself to certain organization and the energy that releases itself from some organization. The true energy or the true I is beyond both processes, both knowledge and ignorance. Ariyamai vittu arivindram, arivu vittu ariyamai என்றாம் இன்றாகும் அவ் அறிவும் அறியாமையும். ஆர்க்கு, for whom is that arivu and ariyamai? This duality. So whenever Bhagavan asks us to inquire into this duality, that for whom is this knowledge? When we ask that, whenever we do self-inquiry, we ask some certain things. We say we know this. We have to inquire for whom. Certain statements will come. I don't know. What am I going to do? For that also we have to inquire for whom is this thought about not knowing. So for both we have to take to the source of the I. But that, where is Bhagavan taking us? Bhagavan is taking us to that I, which is the source of all knowledge and ignorance. So by prescribing us the sadhana of who am I, Bhagavan is directly giving us the ability to hold Ishvara as best as we can, to hold God as best as we can. That is, in the direct practice of who am I, by whenever a thought arises about knowledge, that I know this, how it is going to proceed further, Bhagavan says, don't worry about how it is going to proceed further, but ask, for whom is this thought? I don't know what is going to happen in this situation, whether my health is going to come back, whether I am going to successfully clear the problem of so many people. I really don't know. Bhagavan says, ask for whom is this? There we are going, by holding that consistently, we are going to that root, which is the root of all knowledge and ignorance. So he is taking us and gathering our Shakti and already giving us the tapaspic power to go to the source of Ishvara, the Ishvara Shakti. Arivum ariyamayum arku, for whom is that arivu and ariyamai? For whom is this duality of knowledge and ignorance? So there Bhagavan is taking us to the Ishvara Shakti itself. So whenever we do that, whenever we practically do that, we alleviate the necessity to apply the meditation. I'll go back to the example. I'll slow it down and tell, and how that is transformed in self-inquiry. Let us see once again the example that came up from a live discussion with one of the serious devotees of Bhagavan, who has been practicing Bhagavan's teachings for many years. That is when she could come to that point that she was saying that I could apply this rule, that it is Bhagavan who is working from within everyone. That earlier I used to blame them, I used to find them talking not correct, them not supporting Bhagavan was not so good. But now those things are not there. Bhagavan has given me the strength enough to meditate and free them all of that. Now I am not taking them to task for not supporting Bhagavan, because Bhagavan only is giving them that idea. But when I come to the end of a conversation or a relationship where I live the holding of Bhagavan and engage in that, then I forget the stability and I feel certain of the things I should not have said. I feel certain of the things I should correct in future. What should I do? And this kind of state comes after a long time of meditation, because there was no blaming of the other. Lot of meditation has been done by that devotee, and she has freed herself from the necessity to blame the others. But now a little bit is left, that the mind is moving as to one's own, the regretting of the action or the necessity to correct in future. There one has to apply the rule again. There one has to apply the rule. Is it, if Bhagavan is the one who is impelling all of them and who has allowed me to meditate on that and not blame them anymore at all, is it not the same Bhagavan who is also impelling me to have participated in that? Therefore, there need not be any regret. There need not be any future action plan, but I can offer whatever I participated in, I can offer to Bhagavan. as I have completed the meditation of freeing all the others involved. That is how meditation works. Meditation, only when you forgive all others can you forgive yourself, says the rule of forgiveness. How you can forgive? Only when you forgive all others can you forgive yourself completely, it is said. That is the rule of meditation. When we are meditating, we should see everything in God's Swarupa, and then only you can come to your own Swarupa being that of God's Swarupa. Whereas in Atma Vichara, the action, the practicality of it is turned around. What Bhagavan does, instead of asking us to inquire whether they are all participating in the area of duality or not, but only inquire into what is the source of the Arivum Ariyamayum. Where is it? It is inside me. For whom is this duality of like and dislike? If we do, then we don't need to apply that meditation to everyone, free them, and then come here. We can directly apply this meditation to ourselves only. Whatever thought appears will be either of knowledge or of ignorance. Either I will say, aha, I know this. This is how it is going to go. So Bhagavan says, don't allow it to flower as this is how it is going to go. Or I may say, those people were all wrong and they don't know. I also don't know about these things. It can be about not knowing or ignorance. But in both the situations, Bhagavan says, don't go with the thought process of knowledge or ignorance, but ask for whom is this thought of knowledge or thought of ignorance. The answer will come for me. So you have divided all the thoughts into knowledge or ignorance. Now you are not going to take into either of the branch. So you are not taken to the others at all. You are not taken to the forgiveness of others. There is only oneself, and oneself only originates all the good and all the bad, all knowledge and all ignorance. Therefore, by taking to the source of that, iv arivum ariyamayum arku என்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறியும் அறிவே அறிவாம். To know that oneself, which is the source of all knowledge and all ignorance, which alleviates the need of the earlier meditation. See the beauty of the teaching. The whole area of the other meditation should have been that we should come to that point where we understand God is running everything. So I don't need to blame each of them or the sum of them. Then I will be able to come and free myself. In Atma Vicharam or in Ulladu Narpadu, that freeing everybody, applying that rule to the universe and then coming, which is there in philosophy also, unless it is a universal rule, it cannot be really applied to you, is the finding of many philosophers also. But see, all that is alleviated, is removed. That necessity of gradual meditation is removed when we ask, for whom is this knowledge and ignorance? It is for me. Who am I? This is real arivu. This is real knowledge, says Bhagavan. And in many places in the talks, Bhagavan says that the true knowledge is beyond the duality of knowledge and ignorance. We are going to see that further in the three more verses that are going to come. Let us sit in meditation as to how the necessity for the meditation on the Anya, from the Anya Bhakti, how the Ananya Bhakti, it frees us of the need of completely painting everything white and then coming to the whiteness within, but directly make the whiteness within so that no darkness is present at all. There are two instances which we can share before we sit for the Atma Vicharam practice. One is where a person not connected directly with the ashram is a visitor. He comes and asks Bhagavan after a stay of 2-3 days, I see so many faults happening in the ashram. Oh, Ramana. He asks probably in a tone of question only, not as a blaming. But he asks that, I find so many people erring, so many faults happening in the ashram, but I don't see you correcting them. I don't see you going and correcting each of them. Is it not necessary that we correct them? Then to that person who is not in the ashram but has come in the Jnana Marga, he is told by Bhagavan, does the sun try to bring light to one home or try to brighten one particular area, or does it just focus on shining? So that is what you have to do. You merely shine as the Atma Swarupa. You merely shine as the Atma Swarupa is the suggestion to him. The other instance about the area of correction is that when a devotee asks, when a devotee of Bhagavan asks him that, oh Bhagavan, you have answered like this, almost like that you have answered like this, but if you don't correct us, then how are we going to correct our errors? To him, to the devotee, Bhagavan says, is it not the Ishvara who is correcting everything? So rely on the Ishvara to correct everyone. You don't need to make the doership effort to correct. You will be made to do that action automatically by the Ishvara at the right time. If you are to be the Guru and if you are to make the correction in another, then you cannot escape that action also. The Ishvara Shakti will do it at the right time. So to the devotee who is dependent on him as a Guru and Ishvara, Bhagavan says, rely on the Ishvara Shakti to correct, and you do the Atma Vicharam. And to the person who may not have been having that kind of relationship yet, he says, why do you worry about correcting others? Just merely shine, radiate the light, radiate grace, radiate goodness, and only focus on the focusing of the attention on the eye. Then even this thought of radiating gets subsided in the self. That I am paying attention to the self, and there is that spurana, and that spurana, like Surya, is now radiating energy. That also is a thought, and one has to ask for whom is that thought, and one has to quieten down into that self which is beyond self-attention and radiation. The self-attention can be called as a knowledge process, and the radiation can be called as automatic or ignorant process. One doesn't pay attention to that, but it happens automatically. One has to cross that also, that the spurana of the self-attention and the incidental radiation outside both have to quieten down in the self. Bhagavan says, hold that spurana and be quiet. Then even beyond spurana and radiation, one finds the self to be the true knowledge, which is beyond knowledge and ignorance. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in Atma Ucharam till 8 o'clock. Namo Ramana. Namo Ramanaka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. It is indeed immense grace of that Ramana, who is the self manifest, that is allowing us to meditate on his teachings and to practice the path of self-inquiry. In this beautiful verse, Nandakumarji has also highlighted the different aspects of knowing and not knowing, and more importantly, that they are absolutely one unit. They are two sides of the same coin. We tend to see knowledge and ignorance as opposites, darkness and light as opposites, but they are really the same. They are just different aspects of every limited experience, as both these aspects embedded in it. Every thought has both these aspects embedded in it. If we know something, it implies that we do not know something else. If we say, I don't know this, or I think I do not know this, it implies that I feel I know something else. So there is that classic instance of a devotee who told Bhagavan, I don't know anything at all. And Bhagavan said, okay, you know that, isn't it? You know that you don't know anything at all. If I say, I know everything, then also there is absence of knowledge, because one can never know everything other than by abiding in the source of everything. If you look at even the science, areas of science, they are in constant exploration and they are in constant negation of some other truths which they felt they have discovered. They may say A is right today. Tomorrow they will search and search and search, and then they will say, no, A was wrong, it is B. And then they will continue to search and search and then say, no, B is not the truth, it is C. Actually, there is a poem by Tennyson, it's called Ulysses, where he says that I want to go endlessly in search of knowledge. And Rabindranath Tagore says, where tireless striving stretches its hands towards perfection. But Bhagavan's grace is so immense. It says to us that if we are in this realm of knowledge and ignorance, the objective realm of knowledge and ignorance, there can never be any end to it. It is endless. There can never be any end to gaining knowledge, which will continue to have the shadow of ignorance for following it at all times. So if we want real knowledge, we need to ask for whom, because both knowledge and ignorance are only thoughts. Both knowing and non-knowing are only thoughts. So Bhagavan allows us to transcend both these aspects of thought by inquiring for whom. Most of us are happy with the field of knowing. We are not happy with the field of not knowing. We do not want to accept not knowing. We want to prove that we know, at least to ourselves, we would like to prove that we know. In fact, one of the devotees once said, Bhagavan says you have to drop everything that is known. What happens if that is the case? But we do it quite willingly every day when we want to go to sleep. We are ready to drop everything that we know. But sleep is not the answer either. Non-knowing is not the answer either. So here, Bhagavan is taking us through inquiry beyond the concepts of knowledge and ignorance, also the concepts of chit and jada. Because knowing is consciousness, it is a conscious endeavor, and not knowing, in the nescience of sleep, we are absolutely in a state of insentience, not knowing, like the rock, like the table, they do not know, they have no life, they are jada. So Bhagavan says these are two aspects which are constantly interwoven, like waking and sleep. But Bhagavan brings us to the intersection of these and helps us to transcend the chit and the jada. He helps us to transcend the sthula and the sukshma. The sthula is ignorant, the jada is the body, the physical body, the identification is transcended. Equally, the subtle body is also transcended by making us understand that there is no value whatsoever in any of our so-called intellectual acquisitions. They are all absolutely linked with not knowing. Not only because they are limited in the sense that there is only this much that we know and that much that we don't know. There is a famous statement of Avayar, the great, the wise woman, the wise old woman of Tamil, that when she is asked, what have you learnt? And she says, I have learnt that what I have learnt is equal to a handful of sand. And what I have not learned is equal to this entire universe. This, she says, after so many years of learning, that is a limitation. Not only is it limited in that sense, it is also limited in the sense that it is subject to being lost. Any knowledge that I have gained today is limited in its periphery, in its vastness, in its spectrum. It is also limited in time because it may disappear at any moment due to forgetfulness of one kind or another. So if I forget what I have learned, that knowledge is completely lost. It goes into the field of ignorance. It was knowledge one moment, next moment it has become ignorance. At the same time, something which I did not know, as Nandakumarji says, something which I did not know yesterday, today I can learn it, and that which was ignorance became knowledge. So where do the boundaries of each of these begin and end? We do not know. So there is no need for us to sorrow about ignorance. In this beautiful approach which Bhagavan has given, we need not sorrow about ignorance, and certainly we need not seek any form of knowledge, because both seeking of knowledge and sorrowing about ignorance are only thoughts. So Bhagavan says, go beyond knowledge and ignorance, which are really one and the same. Don't allow the mind to pursue them by thinking they are different. The moment we perceive differences, we give room or strength to the mind. The moment we turn beyond the differences, we transcend the mind. So Bhagavan says, don't give weightage to either of these, which are really one and the same, but inquire as to the source and abide there. And He is, as always, giving us the support to transcend this great realm, this vast realm of duality of knowledge and ignorance in this verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Namo
Namo Ramana to all.
Namo
Namo Ramana.